In our public forums, we champion political positions without tolerating evidence from the scriptures of any religion. We will hear only lesser reasons for positions than the ones which actually persuade voters.
Meanwhile, in our churches, we commonly censor all information that appears political. We hear sermons about evils in which government has gotten involved, but most churches will censor anyone who tries to organize fellow church members to do something about them.
Does the freedom model by the separatists offer us anything?
Does it matter? What if Robinson and Brewster were inspired to create democracy from the Greeks? After all, if you look up democracy in an encyclopedia, you will read that the first democracy was in Greece in about 500 BC.
But if you will read some of the details of Grecian so-called democracy, you won't be jealous. Only about 12% of the population was qualified to vote. The rest were slaves.
And only 2% showed up to vote. And the only thing they voted for was their military general. For all the rest of the public offices, they cast lots.
Their so-called democracy by lottery was so pathetic that the people retained the right to banish the leaders who really bombed. And often tyrants would arise to take over government with popular support.
I hope we can rule out the Pilgrim's model. Freedom is just a carbon copy of Greek government.
Pastor Robinson and Elder Brewster didn't think they were creating anything new. They thought they were just reading how to do it in the Bible. But were they? Is the Bible really the blueprint for freedom they took it for? Or was freedom just an accident of individual interpretation of a book from which anyone can prove anything? Surely, we hear today, it matters not whether you read the Bible or the Quran, because neither of them have a clear enough message to shape anyone's heart. They are but contradictory blank pages upon which every reader will create his own gospel.
Or is it possible that the Bible really does have a few clear messages? And one of them is freedom. Not just in heaven, but on earth.
Are there no foes for me to face? Must I not stem the flood? Is this vile world a friend of grace to help me on to God?
Now, if I were to end this program right now, it would have more respect in many circles. As long as we say it's just a bunch of pilgrims 400 years ago stumbled upon freedom by imagining its outlines in an ambiguous book, the way children imagine angels dancing across the sky when they watch clouds, viewers can smile and say, "Isn't that quaint?" But if I go on to document that what the pilgrims thought they saw in the Bible really is in the Bible, then American aversion to appealing to the highest principles we know kicks in. Christians want to see what denomination put out the film so they can know if they agree with it. And unbelievers already know they don't agree with it if it's in the Bible.
Unfortunately, there are three important reasons why it matters whether the freedoms that separatists saw in the Bible were really there.
First, if the Bible really is the source of our freedoms, knowing it is will encourage us to consult it as a guide to greater freedom and how to keep it.
Second, if Americans can be persuaded that there exists in at least some religion information of value in shaping our nation, we may be moved once again to allow the highest principles we know in those forums in which Americans decide whether to criminalize good or evil.
Third, should Bible believers learn that part of the Pilgrim model was no mere human invention, but was commanded by God, they may conclude it is still commanded by God and may decide to obey God.
If the Bible really is the source of our freedoms, we as a nation need to consult it as a guide to greater freedom and how to keep it. We don't need to force anyone to believe the Bible, but our freedom to believe or not is in danger as long as we who honor the Bible censor ourselves to appease those who hate God.
For this reason, it seems relevant to briefly review the scriptural evidence that the very freedoms which Separatist Pastor John Robinson resurrected are unequivocally embedded in the pages of God.
Let's read about the world's first government in which every man had a voice and a vote. It wasn't Greece in 500 years where the lottery was the voice, and only 1/8 of the men, not being slaves, could vote.
It was 700 years before that. It was in the Arabian desert between Egypt and Palestine. Inspired by his father-in-law, Moses coordinated elections across Israel of 78,600 judges. Israel's government is simplistically called a theocracy, but even God would not enact laws for Israel until after the people had elected him. The election of human judges is stated in Deuteronomy 1:13. It was the people who took candidates from among themselves, and Moses just confirmed them, the way a Supreme Court judge today confirms a president after the people elect him. The candidates were known by the people, a word meaning an intimate working relationship. Josephus supports this interpretation. The leaders were such as the whole multitude have tried and do approve of as being good and righteous men.
These judges were called captains of hundreds and thousands. Even while kings reigned 400 years later, much of the government was by elected captains of hundreds and thousands.
In fact, the system of hundreds and thousands continued long after Israel was scattered. A dictionary used by lawyers defines the same kind of hundreds as the form of Saxon government in England. Each county comprised hundreds, each hundred containing 10 groups of 10 families, had its own court. Its most remarkable feature was the corporate responsibility of the whole for the crimes or defaults of the individual members.
Remnants of the system continued for centuries after the Saxons were defeated, so English masses had experienced a voice in their government long before 1215 AD, when the Magna Carta was signed, thanks to the freedoms pioneered by Moses in 1200 BC.
Just as the Old Testament featured leaders elected by all the people, the New Testament featured church leaders elected by all of their congregation. A footnote to Josephus' account of the origin of the hundreds was added by the translator of Josephus' work in 1828.
This manner of electing the judges and
Officers of the Israelites, like testimonies or campaign endorsements and votes of the people before they were ordained by Moses, deserves to be carefully noted because it was the pattern of the like manner of the choice and ordination of bishops, presbyters, and deacons in the Christian church.
Further evidence is found in Acts 14:23, and the note on that verse in the Geneva Bible, which is the Bible the Pilgrims used.
And when they had ordained them elders in every church, and had prayed with fasting, they commended them to the Lord, on whom they believed. The Geneva Bible note says the apostles committed the churches which they had planted to proper and special pastors, who they appointed not rashly, but with prayers and fastings preceding their choice. Neither did they thrust them upon churches through bribery or lordly superiority, but chose and placed them by the voice of the congregation.
When the Bible says elders were ordained, Geneva translators explain that the apostles confirmed the choice made by each congregation. Moses from 1200 BC, the Christian churches from 30 AD, the Pilgrims in 1620 AD, it appears that a republic was God's pattern from the beginning. It appears that the only time in world history that all the people had a voice in their government was when men modeled their laws after God's. Coincidence?
The Bible really is the source of our freedoms. We as a nation need to consult it as a guide to greater freedom and how to keep it. We don't need to force anyone to believe the Bible, but our freedom to believe or not is in danger as long as we who honor the Bible censor ourselves to appease those who hate God.
Sure, I must fight if I would win. Increase my courage, Lord. I'll bear the toil, endure the pain, supported by thy word.